student body president in Hannah. So, how about those giants? All right, everyone that has some giant attire on, stand up. If you have any giant clothes, either orange and black or, I see a lot of giant clothes. I wanted to see how many giant fans we have here. A lot of you are giant fans, right? All right. On the way over, I was listening to some of the jock talk, and one of the commentators said they dominated. And I thought that was kind of an interesting word. They obviously did dominate. But what was interesting, they lost 3 straight games to Cincinnati. Think about it. Think about how easy it is to become defeated, and yet they roared back, and then they swept the Tigers to become the World Series winners the second time in 3 years. How about that? Let me tell you a story about one of the Giants that was pivotal in the very last game, in the last innings, who you probably don't know this about him, Sergio Rome, superstar, right? Yep. When we had the explosion in San Bruno, one of the victims, the most seriously burned victim, was at the burn center at St. Francis in San Francisco for months and months. And he loves the Giants. So the Giants agreed, at my request, to send a player out to visit him. And they sent out Sergio Rome. Sergio Rome just didn't come by and spend 10 minutes with him, or 15 minutes, or 20 minutes. He spent a full hour with him, talking with him, bringing him Giants paraphernalia. That's a huge win. Huge win for the Giants, but a huge win for humanity, to have someone that popular be that compassionate. That's a hero. So, as you move on with your lives, I want you to remember this. Each person is called to do something, and if they don't do it, it won't get done. It's a quotation, it's anonymous, but it's a very powerful statement. Think about it. If you are called to do something and you don't do it, it won't get done. Let me give you 2 examples. Candy Lightner is a mother. Her daughter is killed by a drunk driver. She's in horrible pain. Come to find out, this drunk driver had driven drunk before, had been cited before. But somehow he was allowed to continue to drive, and he drove, he drank, and he killed Candy Lightner's daughter. Now, lots of people that go through that kind of a tragedy would probably say, oh my God, I just can't go on. What did Candy Lightner do? Candy Lightner started what was called Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, MAD. And what did she do with MAD? She went to the state legislature here in California. She says the law has to be changed. You have to have stricter laws on the books for when people drink and drive. If they have .08 or higher, they should go to jail. So the state legislature took her at her word, was convinced by her arguments, and she was successful, not just here in California, but across this country, in changing our mindset around drinking and driving. And it's changed the way young people now think about drinking and driving. They have designated drivers and why. Another one is a man who lives in Portola Valley, just down the road from us. His son has diabetes. He did really well in business, and he decided that he wanted to get more research on stem cells. So what did he do? He qualified an initiative for the ballot and asked California voters, would you set aside $3 billion to be spent on stem cell research? And the voters of this state said in overwhelming numbers, yes, we want to commit $3 billion for stem cell research. So, he will probably be credited at some point in time with having successfully assisted in curing one of the dreaded diseases in this country. 2 examples of how one person can make a difference. And I want you to think about your lives and how you, as one person, can make a difference. And I'm going to tell you a story about my life. I was just like you. I was raised here on the peninsula. I went to Mercy High School in Burlingame, had a very traditional life. When I was 16, my parents had received an envelope in the mail asking for a contribution to then Assemblyman Leo Ryan. And, you know, we were kind of lower middle class, didn't have a lot of extra money. But I took the envelope and filled out the card and said, I don't have any money, but I'd be happy to work as a volunteer. And put it in the mail. A few days later, I get a phone call. It was a Saturday morning. I was vacuuming, as that was my job to do every Saturday morning. Vacuum cleaner was still going. The phone rings. I pick it up. I answer it. And the person on the other line says, you filled out this card. We're interviewing people. Would you come to this address today for an interview? So I said, sure. So I went to the address. Turns out it was Assemblyman Ryan's home. He was having a campaign meeting there. And they were interviewing young women to be what they called at the time Ryan girls. This is 1966, right? So the height of the Beatlemania. So the outfits that we wore were white boots, black leggings, a houndstooth mini skirt, a black turtleneck, and then a little hat, houndstooth hat that was kind of English. And we went around to various spots throughout the district and campaigned for him. And that's how I got the bug. So it started for me when I was 16. So I graduated from high school. I applied to 2 colleges, Stanford University and UC Davis. Back then you didn't do college tours. Your parents told you where you could apply, and that was it. And I got rejected from Stanford and got accepted to UC Davis. I tell you that because some of you aren't going to get your first choice for college. It is not the end of the world. In fact, it may be just the beginning of a very important chapter in your life. Because for me, had I gone to Stanford, I probably would have had a very different career. But because I went to UC Davis, I was 20 minutes from the state capitol. I started as an intern in Assemblyman Ryan's office. I then got a paid job all through college. And by the time I was at the end of my college career, was working full-time for a joint committee on textbooks in the state legislature. After graduating, I went back to Washington for a year and worked in his DC office when he got elected to Congress. And then I decided to come back and go to law school. Went to Hastings in San Francisco, graduated, took my exam and passed it, became a lawyer here in the state. And then Congressman Ryan says, I want you to come back and be my legislative counsel. And so I did. And I was there for 2 years. At the end of that second year, Congressman Ryan was doing an investigation because young people your age, maybe a year or 2 older, right here from San Bruno, right here from Capuchino, as a matter of fact, had become involved in a church in San Francisco called the People's Temple, led by the Reverend Jim Jones. And he had 2,000 members in his congregation. He was very connected in politics in San Francisco because he could instantly get precinct walkers for any candidate that they supported. And so no one touched them. But there was rumblings about something not being quite right about this, quote, church. Meanwhile, he takes about 900 of his congregation to South America, to the country of Guyana, and created a commune down there called Jonestown. And there people were living in the jungles of this country. But family members had lost contact with their kids who were 18, 19, 20 years old, and they had no interest in coming home, and there was just this real sense that something was wrong. So Congressman Ryan decided to make a trip down there. We made the trip down there with concerned relatives and members of the press. We go and visit the commune. I mean, we land on an airstrip that was remote. We get into a dump truck and travel 3 miles over very rugged terrain to this commune where it's impressive. There's a pavilion, there's cabins, there's a medical clinic, and there's crops growing. So they're surviving pretty well. But over the course of 24 hours, we found out that many people wanted to leave. In fact, there were over 40. But we didn't have enough room in the 2 planes, so we had to order another plane. So we're taking the first airlift out by a dump truck, and I'm leading that particular group. And all of a sudden in this pavilion where Congressman Ryan was staying behind with another group of people that wanted to leave, families, young people, old people, someone tried to knife him. And so this huge noise erupted. Congressman Ryan comes walking down to the truck in a red stained shirt, and we decide we're all going to go to the airport together, airstrip. Get to the airstrip, I'm loading passengers onto the two planes. Unbeknownst to us, there's a tractor trailer following us at some distance. They come onto the airstrip and they start shooting. 7 gunmen start shooting. They shot Congressman Ryan 45 times. One of the few members of Congress in the history of this country to be assassinated in the line of duty. I was shot 5 times on that airstrip. I was 28 years old. I'm lying on the side of the plane. My whole right side of my body is blown up. Bones coming out of my arm. I thought, oh my God, this is it. I'm 28 years old, and my life is over. Are you listening up there? Thank you. So, what do I do? Well, I didn't have a lot of choices, did I? I was on that airstrip. I decided, well, if I could live through this, I didn't want my grandmother to live through my funeral. So I dragged my body. They pushed me into the baggage hold in the plane. The plane wasn't going anywhere, it had been shot. The engine and the tire. They pulled me out. I was placed on the side of the airstrip on an anthill. But you don't sweat the small stuff when you're dying. 22 hours later, I was airlifted out of there. Had not had any medical attention. Taken to the capital of Guyana, where there was a U.S. medevac plane waiting. They took me from this cot, lifted me onto this plane, and it was like someone had just wrapped me in the American flag. And there's never a time that I sing the national anthem or say the Pledge of Allegiance that I don't remember that. Or how lucky you and I are to live in this country. Don't take it for granted. So, 2 months later, I'm out of the hospital after 10 surgeries. I come home. There's still death threats against my life. But I'm thinking, I don't want to be a victim the rest of my life. So I decide, on the very last day to take out papers to run for Congressman Ryan's seat. I go down to the county courthouse. My arm is still in the contraption. I don't have the use of my radial nerve, so I can't even use my right hand. And I take out papers to run for Congress. I ran for Congress. It was a 6-week race, and I lost. I came in 3rd. That wasn't the first time I lost. You're looking at a 3-time loser. I don't want you to be afraid to fail. I lost for student body president in high school. I wasn't successful like him. I lost for Congress the first time I ran. And then in 2006, I ran for lieutenant governor of California. Wanted to be the first woman elected to that post, and lost by less than 3 percentage points. But what I've learned in life is that failure truly is the first step to success. I keep a paperweight on my desk that reads, "What would you do if you knew you could not fail?" Think about that. What would you do if you knew you could not fail? If you have a passion to go into some area, math, science, art, whatever your passion is, follow it. Even if you think it's too hard, don't take the easy way out. Because in life, you need to be doing what gives you a sense of self-worth. You don't want to have just an 8-hour job that you go to that does not give you a sense of accomplishment. That does not help you be the person that will do the one thing that no one else in this world can do but you. So, a year after I ran for Congress and lost, I ran for the Board of Supervisors in San Mateo County against a 20-year incumbent, someone who was pretty darn entrenched, and no one thought I had a chance. I was then 29 years old. I ran, I got elected, I beat him by 18,000 votes and became the youngest member ever to serve on the Board of Supervisors of San Mateo County. Had I not run the first time and lost, I wouldn't have been prepared the second time to run and win. So when you fail at something, do not presume that that is the end of the road. Perseverance is really important. So, 6 years, I'm serving on the Board of Supervisors, and then I run for the State Assembly. In that particular year, I wasn't the chosen candidate. I was too independent. So then Speaker Willie Brown wanted to make sure I did not get elected, and told everyone in Sacramento, do not endorse her, do not support her, do not send her any money. So at the end of the campaign, even though I had a 14-point lead in March, at the end of the campaign it was neck and neck. And I decided that if I wanted to get the mail out, I had to take a risk. Calculated risk, but be willing to take a risk. So at the time, I owned a condominium in South San Francisco, and I took out a $50,000 loan against it. And I was walking the streets of Burlingame, where the bank was, thinking, what am I doing with this $50,000 check in my hand? But it's a good thing I took that risk, because in the end, I won that race by less than 500 votes out of 40,000 votes cast. Got elected to the Assembly, served there for 10 years. During that time, I got married. Do not rush to the altar. I was 37 when I got married, and maybe that was a little bit old, but don't rush to the altar. At 38, we had our first child. As a result, I was the first legislator in California's history to give birth while in office, which isn't great commentary because it would suggest that we don't have enough people that appreciate how important it is to have programming for young parents and to be sensitive to their needs as well. So we then tried to have another baby, and we were unsuccessful twice. We adopted a baby, and then 10 days later the birth mother took the baby back. I was feeling pretty badly. I was thinking, why do these bad things keep happening to us? And my husband, who was an emergency room physician at the county hospital, said, don't worry about this. Really, we've got our health, we've got each other, we've got our son, and we'll try again. Well, the chances of me getting pregnant at 42 weren't very good. So I started running statewide for Secretary of State. And then all of a sudden, I got pregnant naturally. I mean, the chances of that happening were so remote. We were so thrilled that I announced in the governor's press conference room that I was no longer running for Secretary of State, that I was going to run for re-election to the State Assembly. And then 6 weeks later, my husband was killed in an automobile accident on Poplar Drive and North San Mateo Drive in San Mateo. I come rushing back from Sacramento. He's on life support. I have to go to my son's kindergarten class, take him out of class, bring him to the hospital to say goodbye to his dad, and then pull the plug. It's the toughest thing I ever did in my life. So then I am a widow with a broken heart. I am a mother, a single mother of one, and pregnant with our second child. And my husband let his life insurance lapse 9 months before he died, and I was 3 months from personal bankruptcy. So in life, there are going to be times when it is tough. You're going to have ups and downs. That's just part of life. And the real key is to keep moving forward. Don't let obstacles stand in your way. 6 months later, a beautiful baby was born. She was named after her father. She's now 18, and she just started a few months ago at the University of Missouri. Why? I don't know. But that gives you a sense of how life can be. I then, 8 years later, remarried, and my husband adopted both my children, and life has been pretty sweet. Now, along the way, after I ran for lieutenant governor and lost, I went into the private sector as an attorney, and I was really contemplating a political future that was not going to exist anymore. And that's why you can always expect the unexpected in life. Congressman Lantis, who had been there 30 years, announces he's not running for re-election because he's got esophageal cancer. I announce that I'm running. A month later, he dies. They call a special election. And in the course of 3 months, I was elected to Congress. And since then, I've been privileged to represent you and your parents as a member of the United States House of Representatives. And during that time, I've been working on making sure that PG&E is accountable for the explosion that occurred here in San Bruno. I am also working to make sure our veterans who come home from Afghanistan and Iraq are given the services they need. 40% of our returning veterans have post-traumatic stress disorder. They need help. We should be giving it to them. If they're disabled, we should be giving them benefits. That's the price of war. And yet, in our offices in Oakland, Veterans Administration, we have the second worst record in the country for processing claims. So I've been on their case for the last 8 months. And as a result, we've had more than 45 veterans receive cumulatively over $1 million in benefits because we made them do their job. And that's my job, to make sure that the federal government works for each and every one of us. So, we've got about 5 minutes, so I'm going to open up to any questions that you have. What's the number one issue facing our community? It's employment. While San Mateo County has one of the lowest unemployment rates right now in the state, it's still hovering at 6.8%. So as your member in the House of Representatives, I have hosted 9 job hunters boot camps where I've tried to match people who are unemployed. We had one a few weeks ago. We had 700 people show up, and we had 43 employers. And we also had programming, workshops, the ability to have your resume reviewed by a human resource specialist and go through a mock interview so you can brush up on your skills. Again, I think that's how you can reach out to people in your community who are in need. Yes? On the Federal Reserve System. Well, the Federal Reserve System was created intentionally so that it wouldn't be politicized. And when there are efforts to politicize it, it could create havoc with our economy. Now, I do believe they should be audited, and we should have the right to audit it. Historically, they have not. I've supported Ron Paul's bill to require that they be audited. Other questions? Yes? What's the most difficult part of being a congresswoman? It's the travel. Every Monday morning, I get on a plane at SFO. I am on that plane for 5 hours. I get to Washington, D.C. at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I go directly to the U.S. Capitol where we vote. And then on Thursday, I get on a plane at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and travel 5 hours, although it ends up being 8:30 here, but 11:30 on my clock. So my body is never on the same right time zone at the same time, except during this month that we've been home, which has been great. Yes? What's my advice to young women who want to get involved in the political world? Don't let anyone tell you no. Don't presume that anyone knows better than you what you want to be. If you want to be involved in politics, get involved in politics. Work in a local district office of an assemblyman, a state senator, a House of Representatives member. Work with your local cities. Get involved in the youth commission. It is one of the most fulfilling jobs you can have in your life because your boss is not hovering over you here telling you, no, that's not a good idea, don't do it. Your boss is the electorate out there. So if I have an idea that I want to fix something, I could try and get it through the legislature or through the Congress, and if I'm successful, change the world for either 37 million people if they're here in California or 300 50 million people if we're talking about the United States. And when I was in the state legislature, I had more than 300 bills signed into law by mostly Republican governors. Bills that did things like, you're not going to like this part, turn back or moved forward the time when you could get your permit for driving. We had it at 15, we moved it back to 15 and a half. We recognized that most of the accidents were going on either after 11 o'clock at night or when there were other kids in the car. So we restricted provisional drivers from doing that. I passed a bill that became law that allowed drugs to be used on cancer patients that were children. And one of the great moments was when an oncologist, a doctor who works on cancer patients, on pediatric cancer patients, came up to me one day and says, because of your law, there are so many children that are alive today. So there's nothing much better than being able to keep people alive or change people's lives. Yes?
What's your view on Measure A?
On Measure A? Measure A is a measure here in the county that would extend the sales tax. It would make it the most expensive sales tax in San Mateo County. And there is great value to it in that it will be money being used for health care in this county. Seton Hospital is having a very difficult time surviving. It's one of the few hospitals in the northern part of the county that provides services to indigent patients. I'm still undecided as to whether or not I'm going to vote for it or not, though. I understand why we're doing it, but I don't necessarily want us to have the highest sales tax in the Bay Area. Yes?
What is your view on human trafficking in San Mateo and Palm River?
I didn't hear you. What
What is your view on human trafficking in San Mateo County and Palm River?
Okay, what is my view on human trafficking in San Mateo County? Well, I have actually started an initiative in San Mateo County specifically around sex trafficking. There's anywhere between 200,000 and 300,000 young people, your age, under the age of 18, who are involved in sex trafficking in this country. And they become slaves to their pimps. And let me tell you a story that happened right here in this county at the Travel Lodge in South San Francisco. A young girl, 17 years of age, posts on her Facebook page that she's looking for some pills, and she's at the Travel Lodge in South San Francisco. Her mother monitors her Facebook page. Her mother sees this, calls the police department. The police department call the South San Francisco Police Department. They go to the Travel Lodge, they show a picture of this underage girl and say, has she been here? And they say no. 20 minutes later, the young girl comes into the lobby and asks for extra towels. They call the police show up. They found in these 2 hotel rooms 3 girls, 2 of them under 18, 1 of them 19, all of them enslaved in sex trafficking. I interviewed one girl in Washington, D.C. who was very innocently walking down the street one day, and some guy drives up and says, hi, hey, Tiffany. She says, my name's not Tiffany. And he just keeps engaging her in conversation. And then he says, well, hey, can I buy you a hamburger at McDonald's? So they go to McDonald's, they have a hamburger. He takes her out a couple more times, says, you know, now we're boyfriend, girlfriend, except we don't have a lot of money, so I need you to offer yourself up for sex. So this girl is 16, 17. I asked her at the time, how many times a night did you have to have sex? She said between 10 and 14 times a night. She finally escaped from her boyfriend, pimp, who had enslaved her and was on her way to recovery. But long answer to your question, here in San Mateo County, we've developed a zero tolerance for this. The DA is involved, all the local police departments are involved. We're developing protocols, and we're trying to educate the population. We've had trainings at SFO Airport because flight attendants in particular are in a great position to detect when someone is enslaved and being moved around from convention to convention somewhere in the country. Other questions? Well, it's been a pleasure being with you today. Let me just end by saying this. Don't ever let anyone tell you you can't do what you want to do in terms of your life careers. Don't let the naysayers tell you that you can't do something. And don't be afraid to fail, because failure, as I said, was the very first step to success. Good luck to all of you in your futures.